All right, guys, I want to get your reaction to this video because what was that scene yesterday outside the courthouse? It was nuts.
It was like a strange abortion-themed hymnal that was way off key.
No, it felt like it seems like some sort of ritual, which was bizarre.
Yeah, it's very ritualistic. So let's just take a look at this and we'll come back on the other side and talk about it. Watch this.
Exhaustion just set in around like the fourth or fifth time, and you can hear it.
Yeah,
abortion. Like people were just slowly dying.
Right. This chant forever. We're just gonna keep doing it forever. It's just, I mean, safe, legal, and rare is gone. I mean, that is out the window. I mean, I'm watching this and like, we're kind of joking about it a little, but it's so sad. I mean, first of all, isn't it really dangerous to take an abortion pill? I don't know if. And first of all, if they're actually pregnant, incredibly sad. You just watched the termination of a human life, 3 or 4 of them right there. And then if they're not pregnant,
I'm hoping they're Nico wafers, remember, like, or some kind of candy, like a tick. I'm hoping that it's just a spectacle because it is really sad. And to answer your question, there is new research to indicate that, there can be complications with the abortion pill. There's a whole debate around that. So yeah, it's incredibly sad and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, and I saw one of the women who is pro-abortion, and she was promoting this video on social media. There were even pro-life people who were responding to her and saying how callous it is. Like, this is, to your point, Billy, like dismissing the weight of it. Like, and there were people on both sides of this issue who are saying, this is just ridiculous. It looks like a ritual. Like I said earlier, it looks like almost religious, and it's just dismissive of the fact that what you were saying, Dan. This is a human life. Like, this is actually a living being that was inside of you and potentially ending that life right in front of all of those protesters to cheers.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting too? We were talking, guys, about this, that what we're seeing there in that video clip, while, I don't know what their intent is, it actually could be kind of a foreshadowing of what could come if, let's say, from a pro-life perspective, the Supreme Court in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health does rule in favor of the pro-life side, then this could be what they're doing on the screen right there could potentially be a loophole. You want to explain that one, Billy?
Yeah. So last year in 2020, with all the COVID craziness that was going on, what basically happened was that the Biden administration ended up allowing actually earlier this year in April, this chemical abortion pill to be available through the mail. Typically, you have to show up in person. You have to get the pill. And right now, what's so crazy, there's so much abortion stuff going on in this country. You've got the Dobbs case, which obviously was heard this week. Now, they have until December 16th, the FDA, to issue a rule on this, whether or not they're going to require that doctors essentially, I guess a doctor or a medical professional would give the pill out in person, or whether they could be mailed. If they allow these to be mailed, that could really erode, restrictions on abortion, right? People could just get these through the mail without actually going to see a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, and they're already, because let's say it does pass, or Roe is quote unquote overturned, it still gets kicked back to the states. And so you're still going to have roughly half the states are going to have favorable, if you're a pro-abortion supporter, you're going to have favorable laws. And so you'd only have to, if you still really wanted an abortion, you'd maybe in the worst case scenario would have to take a 2-hour flight somewhere. So, which doesn't seem like a bad thing, to have a little more time to think about terminating the life of your child. But yeah, then when you think of the ease of that, like, that's such a back door that I mean, some of these places are looking to exploit some of those things already. I mean, you guarantee that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Billy.
Well, I was just going to say quickly, do you really think, too, that in this political climate, that an administration that is arguing for abortion is going to do anything other than empower the mail order of this, right?
Yeah. Well, in the Hyde Amendment, I mean, the Biden administration is already trying to sort of end the Hyde Amendment, which is the federal ban on federal dollars going towards abortion. And so that one's already in the mix. And yeah, so it's disturbing to think that of the ways, that abortion will continue, even if this particular law, or ruling goes the way pro-lifers want it to. And it kind of brings it back to, guys, I mean, what is the best way to defeat this thing? And it seems like winning the culture is kind of like, it always comes back to that, right?
I think, one of the things too that seems to be getting lost in the conversation. I looked this up right after I saw this video and was reading about it today. And this study is a few years old, but it's by the Beasley Institute. And it's talking about the fact that a lot of sex traffickers use the abortion pill, and there's not enough regulation of it. And it's such a big issue that doesn't seem to be. There's my dog going crazy.
Yeah,
I
Piper.
apologize for that.
Piper's always piping in.
Anyway. Yeah, for sure. Always. But I looked up this one study, like I said, and this is one of the things that someone said. This is a woman who was trafficked, and she said that she had 6 abortions as a victim of sex trafficking. And a lot of it was through using an abortion pill because none of this is regulated. And I feel like that's something that's getting lost in this conversation. And that study predated the pandemic. So now the Biden administration, like y'all have said, have made this available. So I just can't imagine how this plays into that too.
Yeah, it's a loophole. I mean, this very easily could become the loophole. Now, again, I think what you said, Dan, is so important too, because we're sitting here and we're talking about legalities, and you sort of have 3 ways of looking at any persuasive appeal. It's a statement of fact, a statement of value, and a statement of policy. And we talk a lot about the policies, but the reality is you have to change people's hearts. Like you were saying, Dan, it comes back to that, right? Yeah, policies are great, but really changing the heart is what changes the issue. And so we can't forget that. I think that's a big part of this conversation, even with a victory legally.
Yeah, I always say it that politicians are, at the end of the day, politicians are sort of self-preserving and spineless. That is the general vibe of politicians. And so when the culture moves in a way that says, hey, we don't want this anymore, that's when they'll finally stand up and act, because they usually don't lead. Usually they follow in self-interest because they don't want to get voted out. So
yeah. Well, and we're seeing data from CLI and other places. There's a study they just did. They looked from 2002 until 2015, and they looked at all of the abortions that had happened, and then women who had gone to the emergency room after having an abortion. And what they saw was, this abortion pill was not available until the year 2000. So 2 years after that, when their data started, it was like 4% of women who were getting abortions were using, the chemical abortion. Now in 2020, that went up to 50%. So 50% of all abortions in 2020 were chemical. And but the crazy thing is what they saw during this time was a 507% increase in emergency room visits after a chemical abortion, as opposed to a 300% increase in emergency room visits for the traditional early surgical abortion. So this is potentially a medical issue that people should care about as well, in addition to what Tré said.
Yeah, well, I want to give you guys a chance here. What are your parting thoughts here? I'm just watching this B-roll of these. Honestly, if I were to interact with them or someone like them, I'm trying to think of what would I say. And honestly, the best thing I can think of is just to pray for them. I really don't know what else. You're not going to change somebody's view on that with some argument right. I don't know. I mean, prayer is the only thing I could think of that would change their hearts on that. What do you guys think?
I think something that I've come to realize over the last several years is, and there are a lot of schools of thought on this, is that do you change culture, or do you just kind of live separately as a believer in your own culture? And I think the answer is kind of a little bit of both. We're not going to be able to change this current culture as it is, but we can create a better culture on top of it. And I think we just have to create a pro-life culture that values life from the beginning at conception all the way through. And if you create a better culture that's built on the gospel and you attract people to it, the gospel is attractive. We just have to let the Holy Spirit do his work, right? So I think it's about creating a better culture that will become more appealing to this culture of relativism and this nebulous worldview stuff. I think that's the answer. And then, of course, like you said, Dan, is just lifting these people up in prayer, because it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, and when you see something that's repulsive like this, because I think it is for pro-life people to watch this, it's stomach churning. Remembering to pray for them, but also remembering to approach people as though they are people. And I think getting into people's minds and knowing that these individuals, while it might be hard to see this, they believe on their side that they are doing the right and the moral thing. And you have to get into that mindset and talk to them like humans, not calling people murderers, not saying these things that are going to shut the conversation off right away. Because let's all face it, most people who have become Christians, not just brought up in it, I mean, at some point you have to own it, but they will tell you that something made it click for them. So how do we make it click? We treat them like humans, and we hopefully reach them in that way.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. Guys, thanks for being here. And yeah, we'll definitely continue to lift them up in prayer, because clearly a big need at this point, and the court cases as well, as we wait and see over the coming months where that ends up. So appreciate it, guys.